In Jordan, we find what is undeniably one of the most famous human relics of the planet, the forgotten city of Petra. Petra is located at the heart of the Araba Basin, the long valley which runs along the rift to the north, stretching from the Red to the Dead Sea. Founded at the end of the 8th century BC by the Edomites, the town prospered in the 6th century BC under the Nabateans, who took advantage of the prime location on the trade route. Caravans en route for Egypt, Syria, southern Arabia, and the Mediterranean passed here laden with incense, spices, and other luxury products. Towards the 8th century, alternative trade routes and severe earthquakes meant that the town was gradually abandoned by its inhabitants. The forgotten site was eventually rediscovered by Swiss explorer Jean-Louis Burckhardt in 1812. Petra's location, hidden behind steep rock faces and blessed with a constant water supply, made it the ideal place for the development of a prosperous city. The site is only accessible by way of a thin mountain pass, or to the east, along a canyon, the Siq. At its narrowest point, the Siq is only 2 meters wide. Passing in front of these niches sculpted into the rock, symbolizing the presence of a Nabatean divinity, marking the way, and alongside these walls, which erosion paints with shifting tones of whites, yellows, blacks, ochres, and reds, we follow the ancient network of aqueducts dug into the stone, which carried water to the heart of the city. Even in ancient times, rain and dew water was stored and recycled here. Water has always been scarce in the region. Behind half-open curtains of sandstone is the troglodyte city of Petra, one of the world's most beautiful sights. The Kazne, also called the Treasure, is the tomb of the 1st century BC Nabatean king Aretas IV. It was dug straight out of the rock. The Hellenistic-style facade was used as a backdrop for the famous Steven Spielberg film, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It is 40 meters high and 28 meters wide. Sculpted in the stone are Nabatean gods and goddesses, as well as Greek, Egyptian, and Assyrian mythological figures. Behind the Kazne, a short passage, less narrow than the Siq, leads to the low town. Along the so-called Street of Facades, a number of imposing troglodyte temples stand one after another because the residents would make a display of their great wealth by having tombs and imposing monuments built along the street. Further on is the necropolis. The best moment to appreciate this area of this site is the end of the day, when the stone is lit by the setting sun and the colors reach their climax. More than 800 tombs have been discovered in Petra. After the Nabateans, the next to leave their mark in Petra were the Romans, as we can see from the well-preserved Roman theater. Carved out of the rock in the 1st century, the theater had a capacity of 5,000. Many earlier caves and tombs of the necropolis were destroyed during the construction of the building. It is difficult to get a clear idea of the geography of a town which has been so badly damaged over the years by many earthquakes. But one thing is certain. This site, with its famous tombs sculpted into imposing rock faces, is no doubt the world's most beautiful troglodyte site. The wealth of structures discovered here have ensured that since the start of the 20th century, Petra has been recognized by experts as a monumental and unique archaeological site. At the time of Christ, Petra was at its apogee, and its wealth was a source of both admiration and envy. During the 1st century AD, threatened by the growing economic power of the Nabateans, Rome decided to create new maritime trade routes, cutting off Petra's economic activity by diverting the caravan routes through Palmyra in Lebanon. That which brought both fame and riches to Petra ultimately brought on its slow but inevitable downfall. This is the Castle of Pharaoh's Daughter. Only discovered in 1974, it is the only building in Petra not to have been sculpted out of the rock. The walls which remain standing are from a monumental altar dedicated to Aluza, the Nabatean Aphrodite, a legendary pharaoh's daughter. Referred to in the Quran, Uza was a pre-Islamic Arab fertility goddess. One of the 3 most revered divinities at Mecca, she was linked to the planet Venus. A nymphaeum, thermal baths, squares, a mini Rome was recreated within this lunar landscape. The pilgrimage to Petra continues, and it is only after mounting the stairway of 800 steps cut into the rock all the way up the side of the hill that we arrive at the Deir, meaning monastery in Arabic. 45 meters wide and 50 meters high, the Deir is the 2nd largest monument in Petra. The urn which dominates the structure alone is 10 meters tall. The name Deir was given to it in the Byzantine era, around the 4th century, when the building was used as a monastery by the first Christians. Sydney is the most populated city of Australia, with nearly 4.5 million residents. It is the capital of the state of New South Wales. It is a port city located on the country's southeastern coast. Along the coastline, the ocean has flooded deep valleys called rias, carved out from the sandstone. One of these flooded valleys, Port Jackson, around which the city was built, constitutes the biggest natural harbor in the world. Founded in 1788, Sydney was the first European colony of Australia. Today, the city is the financial center of the continent, as well as a major international tourist destination. Sydney's bay can hold up to 10,000 boats, including this one here, the famous Bounty, built for the film Mutiny on the Bounty, starring local celebrity Mel Gibson. It is an exact replica of the 18th century ship of Captain Bligh. The original ship was burned by the mutineer Christian Fletcher in Pitcairn Island in 1789. The site where the first British immigrants landed in January 1788 still remains the city center. The city's central business district, or more commonly, as the city, as the locals call it. 90 banks are headquartered here, as well as over half of Australia's major companies. 500 multinational companies have also set their headquarters here. An ultra-modern monorail loops through the main shopping district and Darling Harbour. The Opera House is undoubtedly one of Sydney's star monuments. The Sydney Opera House is one of the most famous buildings of the 20th century and a major site for the arts, especially the lyrical arts. Its peculiar design, resembling a sailboat for some, a seashell to others, was elaborated by the Danish architect Jorn Utzon. The resulting site has come to symbolize Australia, and especially Sydney. The Opera House is today one of the city's major tourist attractions. The Opera House is famous for its very original shape. Two series of 3 giant shells partially cover one another. The rooftop consists of over 1 million identical white ceramic tiles. Bjorn Utzon derived his inspiration from bowls he had noticed while in Japan. The Opera House was inaugurated on October 20th, 1973 by Queen Elizabeth II. It is the seat of the Australian Opera, the Theatre Company, and the Symphonic Orchestra of Sydney. The Opera House also hosts many artistic performances hailing from abroad. Located in Sydney's port, it stands near Harbour Bridge, the city's other star attraction. Harbour Bridge is a single-span steel arch bridge. Rising 134 meters above sea level, it was the city's highest structure until 1967. Completed in the early 1930s, it is also the 5th longest bridge in the world, stretching 1,149 meters with an arch spanning 503 meters. Harbour Bridge is the main point of crossing of Sydney's Bay, enabling trains, automobiles, and pedestrians to pass from the business district to the bay's north bank. In town, old buildings serve as a reminder of the country's past. Restored to its original Victorian design, the Queen Victoria building occupies a whole block and has been converted into a chic shopping centre. The Gothic Cathedral of St. Mary is located in the city centre. John Paulding, the first Archbishop of Australia, laid the cathedral's first stone in 1868. Construction continued for many years, and in 2000, the arrows initially designed many years prior were finally built, and the cathedral now stands completed. Located in the heart of Chinatown, Market City represents the meeting of two worlds. Designer brands mix the most exotic elements of Asian culture. This fusion is typical of Sydney's Chinatown. Located near Hyde Park, beside the Queen's Square, stands the Anglican Church St. James. It was built in 1824. Though it was not the colony's first Anglican church, St. James is today the oldest church in Sydney. Further down, the Colonial Secretary's building was the seat of the colonial administration. Made of sandstone and built in 1880, the building was designed by the colonial architect James Barnett. Many meetings took place here, leading to the creation of the Australian Federation. The city of Sydney includes the central coastline, the coastal strip north of Port Jackson, and the Blue Mountains, as well as other non-urban areas. It has over 70 beaches, including the famous Manly and Bondi beaches. Bondi Beach, located 7 kilometers from the city center, is easily reached by train or public transportation. It is especially known for its fine sand and rolling waves that make it prime territory for surfing. During the summer, almost everything takes place on the coast, and few sites are as emblematic as the sea-sculpted area between Bondi and Bronte. Things have changed since the British navigator James Cook discovered Sydney in 1770, since the time when, a few years later, the site was used as a penitentiary colony for Great Britain's convicts. Today, Sydney is one of the most attractive cities in the world. The archaeological site of Copan is located deep in the jungle. Copan is an ancient Mayan city which reached its glory in the 7th century AD and was abandoned around the 10th century. It was designated a World Heritage Site in 1980. The most beautiful structure at Copan is undoubtedly the hieroglyphic stairway of Temple 26, located just south of the ceremonial courtyard. Rising over 21 meters high, it is entirely covered in hieroglyphics. Thanks to interpretive research, we now know that its construction began under the reign of the 13th king of the Copan dynasty, and that it was completed by the king's son, Smoky Squirrel, in 755 AD. The glyphs engraved on the stairway constitute the longest known Mayan text, with over 2,200 motifs engraved in the stone. Unfortunately, of the 63 steps, only 15 have been found in their place, 5 of which have been partially destroyed. The portraits of the 5 kings who preceded Smoky Squirrel are displayed at the stairway's midpoint. On the main square stands an altar devoted to the god Kukulkan, winged snake. The altar bears a 2-headed image of the cosmic being. In line with the ideology that developed in Mayan cities during the early classic period, political and religious authority were paired together. The kings of Copan were divine kings, mediators between the human and the supernatural worlds. Large monuments were built during their time. The Acropolis's west courtyards holds Temple 11. The temple was built in the 8th century, during the reign of Jacques, the 16th and last great king of Copan. The architectural contributions of this king were among the city's greatest. This very elaborate temple was designed as a portal to the netherworld. It is decorated with beautifully sculpted serpent heads and heads of other ape-like creatures. In the front, the text on altar Q has been thoroughly translated. Built in the year 755, it describes the dynastic history of Copan and depicts the 16 members of the dynasty seated Indian style, with the founder passing the scepter of power to Jacques. Overlooking the town's main plaza, the Pyramid of Jacques rises 30 meters high. It was the king's last construction. If this building seems strange, it is because, for unknown reasons, the pyramid was erected above the previous temple, without either destroying or damaging it. The greatest architectural achievement of Copan is perhaps seen in Temple 22. This temple was designed as a model of the primordial mountain in Mayan cosmology. On the upper floor, many stone skulls are displayed to symbolize passage to the underworld. In the ruins of Temple 18, reliefs representing the last great king of Copan, Jacques, can still be seen. Temple 10 displays the architectural technique of corbelled vaults used by the Mayas. Stele D is located north of the main plaza. It represents one of the dynasty's major kings, 18 Rabbit, in the year 736. He is depicted here under the traits of an aged god. Many steles have been attributed to him. Hundreds of steles have been identified in Mayan country, coupled with small altars like this one here, the turtle altar. Stele B also represents the 13th king, alias 18 Rabbit, during his ascent to the throne. Sculptors used a particularly soft material, volcanic turf, and the steles have been sculpted in high reliefs. Most Mayan steles were visibly painted in vivid colors such as red, yellow, and black. The steles are oriented east-west so as to be illuminated by the rising and setting sun. Each stele, paired with its altar, represents the king god performing a ritual during which he embodies a divinity, such as Jacques, the corn god. During the 7th century, Copan became one of the most powerful Mayan cities. This period corresponds to the reign of the 18 images. The epithet 18 rabbit was due to an error in transcription. Copan's golden era reached its end when 18 rabbit was captured and sacrificed by another Mayan tribe. The end of the dynasty, however, did not provoke the sudden and brutal collapse of Copan, contrary to what occurred in other classic Mayan cities. From the 9th to the 13th centuries, the population slowly decreased and the city was eventually abandoned. Just like Tikal and Chichen Itza, the archaeological site of Copan is one of the most interesting pre-Columbian sites, into the heart of Mayan country. With a population of 13 million, the city of Istanbul, Turkey is a major financial, commercial, industrial, and cultural hub. The city straddles the Bosphorus and sits on 2 continents, Europe and Asia. The city also lies between Russia and the Mediterranean. Istanbul is usually considered European because the city's old town is located on the strait's western shore. Formerly called Constantinople and also Byzantium, the city officially became Istanbul on March 28, 1930. From a historical point of view, Constantinople, today known as Istanbul, was one of the 3 greatest capitals of the ancient world, along with Athens and Rome. In the historical area of the Golden Horn, the Church of St. Sophia, also called by her Greek name Hagia Sophia, was built at the request of the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I in 537. This edifice, which is 15 centuries old today, was turned into a mosque after Constantinople was seized by the Ottomans in 1453. The 4 minarets were added on during the reigns of different sultans. Renowned for its mosaics on a gold backdrop, the building was turned into a museum in 1934 by then-President Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. The building's design is slightly inspired by the Roman Pantheon and by primitive Western Christian art. This style, which was influenced also by Iran, is today called Byzantine. The building is supported by 107 columns. It is topped with a dome measuring 31 meters in interior diameter and 55 meters in height. That kind of dome height remained unequaled for 9 centuries until the beginnings of the Italian Renaissance. St. Sophia is a major work of Byzantine architecture. Not far from here, the Grand Bazaar is a labyrinth of covered halls stretching out over many hectares. It is a true enclave within the city. All of the alleys are lined with shops. The bazaar used to be the standard Turkish market, but today, its 3,000 shops have mostly become devoted to tourists. Two bridges over the Bosphorus link the city's European and Asian areas and enable access to the rest of the country. By its geographical situation, Istanbul is very connected to the sea. The Black Sea gives into the Mediterranean Sea through the Bosphorus Strait and the Sea of Marmara. Many excursions and boat crossings are offered to locals and visitors. Visitors can move on to the beautifully restored Golden Horn district and amble through the streets lined with typical Ottoman houses in painted wood. The Topkapi Palace became the administrative center of the Ottoman Empire after the fall of Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire. Construction of the palace began in 1461 under the reign of Mehmed II. Additions were made until the 19th century, at which point the Ottoman sultans abandoned it. When Mustafa Kemal founded the Republic in 1924, he transformed the palace into a museum. The Topkapi Palace became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985. It is described as unique not only by the quality of its architecture, but also by the organization of its buildings, which reflects the organization of the Ottoman court. The imperial harem is a vast complex of rooms that occupied the private apartments. The harem was the residence of the Sultan's mother, the Sultaness Valide, the Sultan's concubines and wives, the rest of his family, including his children, and their servants, as well as the eunuch supervisors. It contains over 300 rooms and was occupied by 400 people. There are many kiosks in the garden. Here is the Baghdad kiosk. It has a marble facade bearing the ancient stripes of red and green porphyry. The inside is a great example of an ideal Ottoman room. With its stained glass windows, its use of mother of pearl, its intricate decoration, this pavilion is one of the last standing examples of classical Ottoman palace architecture. After having witnessed many historical and political changes, the Bosphorus Strait, which separates east from west, is today an international waterway free of access. And, since the city is in two parts, every morning 1 million inhabitants rent over 150 ships, public or private, to go work in the metropolis. Everyone has heard of the island of Bali and its seaside resorts, its stunning beaches lined with coconut trees. But the life and talents of the Balinese people who built this country is less known. Bali is an island in Indonesia. It is one of the Little Sunda Islands. It has a surface area of 5,637 square kilometers and a population of approximately 4 million. The capital city is Denpasar, near the southern coast. Temples are found everywhere in Bali. Each house and each village has at least one temple. For this reason, Bali is known as the Island of 1,000 Temples, or Puras. The Sanskrit term pura means place surrounded by a wall to protect the temple from evil spirits. The temples always face the holy mountain at the center of the island and thus of the world. The Balinese have devised a combination of fervent Hinduism and local animism. Though they remain empty for most of the year, the Balinese temples become spectacularly enlivened during celebrations and ceremonies. The Pura Mayan Temple is a huge state temple built in the 17th century. The grounds cannot be accessed as they are considered sacred and hold many meru, or sanctuaries with multi-tiered roofs. They represent the link between the gods and the earth. The number of roofs is always uneven because, contrary to even numbers, they have an exact middle number. Pura Tana Lot is a temple dedicated to the sea. It is one of a long series of 7 temples to the sea along the island's southwestern coast. Each temple is thus visible from the one preceding it and from the one following it. Tana Lot is a cultural icon and a site of pilgrimage. During his travels in the 15th century, the priest Niratha requested that fishermen build a sanctuary on this rock because he felt it was a sacred site that was favorable to worshiping the Balinese sea gods. Within the traditional design of Balinese temples, the easily recognized Koryagung is a stone and brick door, decorated with sculptures. It symbolizes the holy mountain which leads to the realm of the gods. This door opens onto an inner courtyard that is characteristic of Balinese temples. Here, offerings are made to the sound of music. The mountain range in the center of the island of Bali has many peaks that rise to an altitude of over 2,000 meters. The highest peak is Agung at over 3,000 meters. Named Mother Mountain, it is also an active volcano. High mountain ranges provoke rainfall, and the volcanic nature of Bali is partially responsible for its exceptionally fertile soils and favors agricultural production. The vast area on the south side of the mountain range is devoted to rice cultivation. Balinese agriculture also produces small amounts of fruits, vegetables, and renowned Arabica coffee. In Klungkung, the former capital of one of the most important Balinese kingdoms, the Palace of the Raja is worth a stop. From the opulent era during which the kingdom was the most respected and attracted the most famous artists, only the Hall of Justice and the floating palace remain. The ceilings of the hall are of particular interest. Its paintings illustrate the zodiac, the Balinese calendar, incurred punishments in great battles and legends. It is akin to a history book. The island is surrounded by coral reefs. There are black sand beaches to the north and east and white sand beaches to the south. Other than those close to the Tana Lot Temple, the beaches are not yet major tourist destinations. Yet small Balinese boats are present and available for pleasant outings on the sea. North of the capital of Denpasar, Ubud is the cultural center of the island. The Pura Saraswati Temple is located beside a marvelous lotus pond. This late 19th century temple is devoted to the Hindu goddess Saraswati. She is the goddess of learning, knowledge, and the arts. Tirtha Ganga is renowned for its royal water palace. Poisonous snakes protect the temple from evil spirits. Ponds full of fish, fountains, divine statues, and lush vegetation make it a place of well-being, in keeping with Balinese culture. In Bali, sea fishing also represents a major resource for the country. But generally speaking, Indonesians are afraid of water, which is believed to be the refuge of evil spirits, and many Indonesians do not know how to swim. Fishermen thus constitute a special group, the heirs of a trade that is handed down from father to son. Samur is one of the biggest traditional fishing villages of Bali. Its fish market is famous. The fishermen here use traditional prahu boats and do not stray far from the coast. They fish barracuda, tuna, and sea bream. Bali, the island of the gods, radiates peace, charm, and beauty. It is one of the smallest islands of the Indonesian archipelago, but it is by far the most coveted tourist destination. Jewel of the Nile, constructed for the most part under the 18th and 19th dynasties in the 14th century BC, the Temple of Luxor or Opet in the south is an Egyptian temple dedicated to the cult of Ammon. It is located on the site of the ancient city Thebes, the capital of the empire, which has also held the Karnak Temple in the north. Dedicated to the divine triad of Thebes, Ammon, Mut, his wife, and Khonsu, their son, the Luxor temple functioned in partnership with that of Karnak, to which it was linked with path lined with sphinxes, a dromos over 2 kilometers long and bordered by 700 sphinxes, with those close to Luxor in the image of the pharaohs. Each year during the festival of Opet, the god Ammon would take this path to go to his southern harem in a grandiose procession. The oldest currently visible parts of the temple date back to Amenhotep III. It was later modified by Ramses II, who notably added 6 monumental statues and 2 obelisks, one of which was offered to France in 1831 and has stood in the Place de la Concorde in Paris since then. The Great Pylon entrance measures 65 meters wide and 24 meters high. Its 2 massifs were originally covered by a white primer decorated with precious metal plaques and sculpted decorations painted with vivid colors. 4 baboons in poses of adoration are carved onto the pedestal of the pink granite obelisk that remains in place. This obelisk stands about 26 meters high and weighs around 230 tons. Its pyramidal summit was covered by a sheet of electrum, an alloy of 80% gold and 20% silver, which sparkled in the sunlight, symbolizing the sun god Ra. Luxor Temple was conceived according to a classical plan. Crossing the pylon through a narrow door, the procession which came from Karnak with the solar boat of the god Ra would first cross this courtyard before getting to the sanctuary, where the statuette of the god was kept in the precious naos. This first courtyard, built under Ramses II, is surrounded by porticos, including a double row of 74 massive columns that recall those of Karnak, with smooth bases and closed papyrus-shaped capitals. The south end of courtyard is also ornamented by colossal statues that alternate with the columns. 11 giant statues on foot and 2 colossal statues sitting. The majority of them were sculpted in granite, and they all carried the name Ramses II. The colossal statue materializes 2 facets of the king, the human and the divine. The role of the colossal statue is the cult, the elevation of the king to divinity. Ramses II was a great theologian. He adopted for himself the initiative of the monotheistic cult of the sun begun by Akhenaten, but he also preserved the traditional religions. While working to develop a religion without borders based on his own person, he continued to favor the temples of the great gods of the empire, Amun, Ra, Ta, or Osiris, in order to bring the people together. He bestowed a splendor without equal to temples and cults to gods all over. 2 more sitting colossal statues in the form of Ramses the Great precede the entrance of the great processional colonnade. The reliefs on the lateral walls of the pathway date back to Tutankhamun and Horemheb in the 14th century BC. They show the official festival of Opet. This celebration took place during the 2nd month of the flood season. In a ceremonial boat pulled by a procession from the Nile River during its growth, the Theban triad of Amon, his wife Mut, and their son Khonsu would travel from Karnak Temple to Luxor Temple, surrounded by soldiers, musicians, and dancers. There, the god Amon, taking on his fertile form Amen-Min, the phallic, rediscovered his vigor. And then, at the end of the celebrations that would last 11 days, he would return to Karnak, this time by way of the great Dromos, still in the company of his divine family. Built around the sanctuary of Amen-Min, Luxor Temple was consecrated to the mystery of life that the god Amun, in the form of the beneficent Nile River, renewed each year. The colonnade leads to the 2nd hypostyle courtyard. But let's go back to ancient times and another room with representations of the gods, located nearby at the end of the temple. This small room with 4 columns held the table of offerings. Here, during the 15 days of the festival of Opet, priests followed each other in, leaving the diverse fresh victuals that were necessary for the festivities of the gods. The decorations show Amenhotep III paying tribute to God and receiving the crown of Egypt from the hands of his divine father Amon. The rooms leading up to the naos commemorate the myth of the king's supernatural origin in graven images. Amon will once again marry Mut, who will again give birth to Khonsu, a ritual where the pharaoh will also be reborn from his father Amon. Thus, each new reign favored the beginning of a new cycle. Furthermore, this allowed a celebration of the permanence of the royal function, periodically renewed by Amon. This was in fact the major function of such a temple. Antigua, Guatemala is the former capital of the Kingdom of Guatemala. It is known for its colonial architecture in Baroque and Renaissance style. Founded by the Spanish in 1543, the city was then reputed as the 3rd most beautiful city of the Spanish Indies. In the city center, the main plaza offers a cool respite beneath the trees. It contains the Fountain of Sirens, designed in the 18th century by the architect Miguel Porras. Bullfights and tournaments used to be held in this old plaza. Convicts were also executed here. Surrounded by the Agua, Acatenango, and Fuego volcanoes, and located in the center of the country, the city of Antigua was destroyed by earthquakes many times. The Cathedral of San Jose was itself rebuilt many times. Originally built around 1541, the church was first demolished in 1669. It was then rebuilt and consecrated as a cathedral in 1680 after having been under reconstruction for 11 years. The cathedral was in its time one of the greatest in Central America before being partially destroyed by the notorious earthquakes of 1773. Its architectural design is cruciform, and it includes 3 naves. The rows of naves are topped by chapels. The Spanish architect and sculptor Martin Cantos rebuilt and decorated the cathedral in utmost 17th century Baroque style. The sculptures and paintings have retained their original radiance. Like the cathedral, the Paco Central is lined with elegant arcades. Its construction dates back to 1740, and though it was slightly damaged by the earthquakes of 1773, it resisted quite well due to its solid construction, consisting of arches on 2 levels and many columns and vaults. The city fell victim many times to earthquakes, and finally nature won over the Spanish city when the earthquake of 1773 buried it once and for all. Thus, the city has retained its past appearance. Antigua is without a doubt the most beautiful city of Guatemala. Its charm emanates from the ruins that date back to the earthquake and from the picturesque cobbled roads, lined with venerable colonial houses adorned with flowery patios. The religious and governmental buildings do not fully represent Spanish colonial architecture. Other examples are to be found in more or less luxurious private residences. San Francisco is a superb church that exemplifies Baroque Hispano-American style. The sculptures of 16 saints are nestled among the thick, twisted columns along the facade. It was built in the 16th century. Antigua has often been struck by earthquakes, but the town itself has never been completely annihilated. Its heritage and spirit gives the city a rare and special charm. Of the buildings that could not withstand the quakes, a few friezes remain, a few sculptures still stand, as if to better remind us of the past catastrophe. The Nobel Prize winner and Guatemalan writer Miguel Ángel Asturias wrote, "The telluric violence of our continent has taught us the charm of destruction." Nowhere does the phrase better apply than in Antigua. The Santa Clara Convent was founded in 1699 by 5 nuns. The Baroque southern facade of the neighboring church is richly decorated in stucco. The walkways of the convent's spacious 2-story cloister, with their excellently proportioned double arches, and the fountain and courtyards. Soon after its founding, the Santa Clara Convent expanded to become a rather elaborate residence with nearly 50 nuns. The sacristy still contains hidden passageways and underground rooms. One of the masterpieces of religious architecture and one of the most remarkable sites in Antigua is Las Capuchinas, the convent of the Capuchins, built in 1736 under the supervision of Diego de Porres, then the city's head architect. It is one of the most beautiful 18th century convents in Guatemala. The El Carmen Church, built in 1728, is the 3rd church to have been built on a single site. Its main facade is truly unique, exhibiting a Baroque style with a triple pair of prominent columns, instead of the niches and saints that are usually included on the facades of Antigua's churches. In 1749, the construction of a men's monastery was undertaken, and the luxurious structures of La Merced were completed in 1767. Its facade is one of the most beautiful in all of Antigua, with complex decorative motifs and white stucco over a yellow backdrop. The church's bell towers, low and thickly set with larger columns and arches, are different from those built elsewhere in the Americas in less earthquake-prone areas. But the monastery that was attached to the church was completely destroyed by the earthquake of 1773, and it was never rebuilt. At the top stands San Pedro Nolasco, the order's founder. The Blessed Virgin Mary of Mercy is worshipped inside the church. The gilded altars and altarpieces are truly beautiful. A pilgrimage takes place at La Merced every year during the Holy Week of Easter. The streets then become packed and are decked in carpets of flowers to set the stage for the daily processions. Then Antigua relives its glorious past.